Hey friends, welcome back. Just a quick note before we get started. I've had to re-upload this video because for some reason 90% of the world couldn't see it. Not sure what the issue is or was, but real quick, in the last version I asked folks to consider the person on the receiving side of your comments. You may not all agree with my guests or even my choice of guests 100% of the time, and that's a-okay, but please do remember, on the receiving end of negative comments is a real flesh and blood person with feelings. So thanks for listening and thanks for tuning in. I have a very interesting interview for you today, brought to you in part by our friends at Blockstrain Technology. And although I'm not a user of cannabis, I want to talk a little bit about the sea change in attitudes we're seeing regarding this issue, which apparently includes the president himself.
President Trump says he's likely to support ending a blanket federal ban on marijuana. All rise. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here. Judge, this is huge. I mean, this is a combination of states' rights, right? I mean, to a degree, and also a major move for an administration that we thought was going to be really tough on weed.
Now, to reiterate, I'm not a recreational user of cannabis, but I fully understand what I believe are some of the medical benefits. And beyond that, this really is a libertarian issue.
Are you surprised? Does it feel like President Trump is revealing a libertarian sort of stance here, or something that, to me, I think appeals to more millennials? It appears to more non-traditional Republicans. I think it could ultimately be a good thing for the party. But what do you think? I mean, it's amazing to see this play out.
I am surprised, but happily so. The libertarian in me says you should be able to put into your own body what you want.
I don't think YouTube wants us talking about these particular things, but as it relates to legalizing cannabis, right now, guys, medical marijuana is legal in 29 states, and recreational marijuana is legal in 9 states. According to Fortune magazine, legal marijuana sales hit $10 billion in 2017, so the sea change is real. So keep an open mind as I have this conversation with Robert Galarza, the CEO and director of Blockstrain Technology Corp. This is not an ICO. This one trades on the TSX as DNAX.V. It's Blockstrain Technology, and Robert Galarza is my guest. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I hope I framed that up well. I know that this particular topic is a polarizing one, but we can see a shift in the landscape. Marijuana is being legalized across the country. And I think it's an important story because, to me, there are health benefits to marijuana and marijuana-related products. So why don't you give us the elevator speech about Blockstrain Technology Corp., and then we'll really get into the meat of this interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you for having me. And we agree. Cannabis is definitely one of those, I guess you could call it, it's definitely an evolving marketplace when we start looking at where the legalization is going. The West Coast of the U.S. is definitely kind of taking the forefront of, pushing the envelope for legalization. What we started doing is we actually developed the company up in Canada, predominantly because we're kind of looking at federal legalization and really, really wonderful framework for how they're trying to implement a safe and legal system for distribution of a product that was pretty much running in the black market for since its existence many years ago. So Blockchain Technology Corp was built and designed as a software platform that can both speed up the process for helping legal producers go through the testing procedures associated with the cannabis and in validating that product and utilizing blockchain technology for basically creating visibility of the supply chain within the cannabis industry. So at the end of the day, we're trying to create a mechanism that gives legal consumers information about the product they're consuming, and that involving both the microbial and pesticide tests as well as the genetic makeup of the material, so that they know what they're putting in their body is what they need from a medical perspective or what they want from a recreational perspective.
Okay, so that's interesting because, one of the benefits, and again, I don't use marijuana, but I do use CBD oil, and one of the benefits, I think, of the legalization is the transparency here, because we can know who the producers are, we can do the testing, we can see what is actually in this stuff, as opposed to The illegal stuff bought on the street, you don't know where it's grown, you don't know what's in it. It could be laced with all sorts of bad stuff. And, I know there's a synthetic marijuana floating around that's really hurting teenagers that are using that kind of stuff. So let me ask you this as it pertains to your company working with legal producers and legal consumers. Your company is focusing on the legality of cannabis sales and cannabis consumption. And you're also providing the transparency which allows people to know where their stuff came from and what's in it, correct?
You're 100% correct, and really the roots of our company. Myself and my partner are both originally from Southern California, so we kind of started in this industry, even the technology sector, a number of years ago. And one of the big things we saw was, every time a product would start to gain some level of popularity based upon whatever name of that product was. So, for lack of a better terms, you could kind of classify it as like if there was a Coca-Cola without it being Coca-Cola, and everybody wanted to drink Coca-Cola, then you would see 500 other Coca-Colas pop up that would look nothing like Coca-Cola, right? And serve nothing like Coca-Cola. So one of the issues we saw was, there is no standards. And that's a scary proposition when you're looking at the biochemical and chemistry effects that this plant has. When literally, 2 batches of the same product from the same mothering plant can yield 2 separate products with different THC and CBD levels, different terpenes. And the problem there is that, if you're taking it medically, sometimes there are people with heart conditions that get on a high level sativa with high level THC. That can go into almost respiratory failures. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into needing to make sure that you have, even from a legal source, that you have, an understanding of what you're putting in your body. And then beyond that, you're exactly right. I mean, the black market of this industry taints a lot of product. One of the scary things right now we're dealing with in both Canada and the United States right now is the fentanyl crisis. We have an exponential rate of overdose deaths associated with this very, very scary drug that's being injected into other. And we haven't seen it fully stretch into the cannabis space necessarily, but it very well could because of the effect that it can have on people's bodies. And so that's a scary thing. And that's why it's so important to make sure that we have, safe and legal inventory that's clean and tested, going from the producers to the consumers. And then on top of that, it's also very, very sad and scary that, some of these pesticides that are being used, when they're burned and consumed and inhaled, they can convert into things like cyanide. I mean, it's pretty scary stuff out there. So for us, it's being able to use, being able to empower those legal producers with information that they get, when they're working with the approved labs, and then being able to provide that information quickly and protect it through blockchain technology for immutability and for verification purposes is something we're really, really excited about.
I'll just give a little story here as an aside. My father-in-law got cancer. This is about 15 years ago, and he had pancreatic cancer, and it took him very, very quickly. And his life in hospice was just a life of misery, trying to manage the pain. And they managed the pain with heavy, heavy narcotics. And it was very painful to watch him go, because one of the ways that they sort of help people with terminal cancer transition, at least at that time, was by depriving them of water, guys, dehydrating the patient until they die. Not from the cancer, but from dehydration. It's absolutely horrible. And one of the powerful ways that cannabis can benefit cancer patients alone, I don't even know if the FDA will allow me to say this, so I'm going to just speak subjectively. Again, my First Amendment protected speech, it would be my understanding that marijuana could help manage pain. It could help eliminate nausea. Marijuana for a cancer patient might bring appetite back. Really important things that could benefit real human beings who are suffering. And one must ask, why does the FDA and the government want to stand in front of this? Why do they want to prevent people from having access to a plant that may benefit them and not hurt them? I think it's an important question. So your thoughts on that, your thoughts on just the benefits, and why does the FDA want to get in the way of this?
Yeah, and I think that, and that's a great question and very good points. And I'll share an anecdotal story myself. I lost a very close friend of mine just a couple of years ago, actually about a year ago, to cancer as well. And I went to college out in Austin, Texas. So Texas is a state that currently doesn't have really access to medical cannabis in any way, shape, or form. And he reached out to me when he was diagnosed, and I reached out to some of my good friends up in the Canadian market who have been doing medical work in this sector. And I didn't realize, I was like many people, just get him some cannabis or some CBD. And what I didn't realize is we would need a full diagnosis of what he's been diagnosed with and what status was in, what his biochemistry is, in order to properly provide him with the right medical treatment of cannabis, because they've been doing it medically for so long in Canada. And unfortunately, I couldn't get enough information down to him, and access to the product was limited, and we lost him just a couple months later. And it was so I share with you that loss. It's a hard thing to see somebody go through that. I think that what we're dealing with is right now we've already seen the research really take off in these other countries, in the Canadian market, as well as countries like Israel that are at the forefront of research and R&D. Why the U.S. is not quite there, I think that right now it's getting past that kind of DEA level. I think that getting the federal machine to move at that scope and framework is I don't know. I think it just moves slowly. Quite honestly, we have hope and very we're very positive thinking people. So we would say that we hope that the FDA will come down and say, you know what, let's make this a Schedule II narcotic at least, so that we can do some research on it and we can use it for some level of medical purposes. It doesn't really deserve to be a Schedule I, especially when even drugs like cocaine are a Schedule II. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then again, I'm not a politician, so I never really know exactly why the government does what it does. The good news is for us all is that other countries are starting to take initiative, and because the United States, my home and my root is just that, independent states with their sovereignty that allows them to be able to take the initiatives themselves, and that's what makes America so wonderful is that you've got states that can kind of do their own thing to a certain extent, and that's exciting for the future for us.
I think the fact that 29 states have legalized medical marijuana use is a big deal. It's important that states stand up to federal government tyranny, and this is an example where now 29 states, if you have a very severe medical issue in one of these 29 states, Minnesota, New Mexico, Arizona, Arkansas, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, and on and on and on, Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia, and Florida, etc., you can have access to medical marijuana should you find yourself with cancer or another serious health issue for which medical marijuana is an approved use. And I think it's very, very important. It speaks to our freedom as human beings that states are willing to stand in front of federal tyranny to give people the choice. So, Robert, give us the investor pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, we're very excited to be able to have the opportunity to bring investors in. The public markets up here in the Canadian space are exciting because they're built upon kind of growth and inclusion, and we certainly want stakeholders to be a part of what we're developing here. At the end of the day, we're a data company. We're building essentially a framework that can empower and bolster the industry and can support secondary systems for visibility and supply chain management kind of across the board. So for us, data is classified by Deloitte and most of the other major players in the world as the new gold or the new oil, and we certainly feel that way as well. Companies like Google and the Amazons of the world are built upon intelligent information, and there's billions of data points when you're looking at the cannabis industry. And what we've decided to do is, rather than going about this in terms of looking at the retail market or the brand market, or trying to somehow make something really cool so we can put ourselves on the cover of magazines, what we did is we said let's look at the most genesis starting point of the product, the most finite portion, which is the genetic framework of this agricultural good, and then let's move forward in terms of being able to empower the industry with information about that, and then we move further in terms of like where the product's going and what it's doing, and being able to build in more intelligent information to be able to create better solutions for the long term. So we do intend to be one of the major players in the technology sector in the cannabis industry in the next few years, and we have an incredibly strategic growth model for additional technologies we're going to be developing, which is super exciting. And we're we're a data company, and information to us is power, and it excites us, and we're at an entry point of an exciting industry. We're at the tip of the iceberg right now. And I think that's the most important thing for any of our investors that we've spoken to, for them to know that we're going to work our tails off to make the best product in the world, for consumers, for producers, for regulators. And we believe that value proposition is pretty strong for long-term growth.
Okay, guys, and the website is blockstrain.io, protecting cannabis and community, global cannabis strain identification, registration, and verification. Well, let me ask you this, Robert. You talk about information being key, and you're right, but how will you monetize the information? Here you've chosen the route of going to the TSX and doing a traditional stock offering. So with that said, how are you guys going to create revenue and monetize this information?
Yeah, great question. That's the most important question for any investor, right? It's like, how's the business going to run? And this part of this went into making sure when we were building the technology, you don't fall so much in love with what you're building as to why you're building it. And essentially, what we've done is we've automated the testing process for cannabis at the entry point for the industry to be able to make sure that we can help get all the product through the mandatory testing that's necessary. We serve as almost like an Expedia at that point. We've utilized technology to cut down on all the administrative paperwork that's within a production facility, so it makes it really easy and simple for people to get their testing there. And so we make money as product moves. We do have a transactional based model that we're able to grow the infrastructure, the more money we can make. And then beyond that, we have visibility tools that are built on a full SaaS model. So for any producers that are out there wanting to maximize efficiency within their own ecosystem and their own infrastructure, they're able to use our data and our dashboards and our visibility solutions to have that visibility of their operations. And then beyond that, we also have a really amazing team of custom developers. So we come in and for larger enterprises such as a government or regulatory body, we look to build full visibility solutions, almost like a mission control, to be able to give full 24-hour visibility of all inventory product that's being verified and moving in the ecosystem. So for us, we definitely feel like that's a great model for long-term growth, is both having a transactional model and a larger enterprise model for software.
Well, Robert, thanks very much. And guys, again, the name of the company is Blockstrain Technology Corp. And Robert, do you want to shout out the website so people can learn more?
Absolutely. So our website is www.blockstrain.io, and you can go in there and click on our investor section and find out a little bit more about us, including our filings as well as recent news, updates, some of the business that we've been entering into up here in the Canadian market, and obviously looking to expand. And we are, the other side of it too to mention is our strategy is built to be global. We're very fortunate that our development team has built some incredibly sophisticated technology over the past 20 years for the world, and so we definitely intend to be able to work with any of the new countries and participants that are coming online from a legal perspective in helping support their infrastructure as well. I think it's an exciting time, guys. Anybody who's interested, just keep an eye on what we're up to. We've got obviously we're a public company, can't say everything we're doing, but we've got some exciting things that are going to be coming about in the next few weeks and few months. And we're eager to hopefully convince provide tools that'll convince the federal government to deschedule that cannabis and make it a Schedule II, so we can make this medicine available to patients that need it.
Yeah, it is just absolutely insane that marijuana is a Schedule I drug, and they're locking people up in prison for a very long time. It's just insane. And, I do think that there's a sea change here, and I personally welcome it. And again, I don't even use marijuana, but I can see the benefits for so many people, and the benefits of keeping people out of prison for something as innocuous and frankly harmless as marijuana. Guys, our guest has been Robert Galarza. He's the CEO and director of Blockstrain Technology, TSX, DNAX.V. Robert, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. And guys, thank you so much for your support. You know how much we appreciate it. And visit us at SGTreport.com, and also visit us over at thelibertymill.com. We really appreciate it, guys. Standing for liberty, and thanks for standing with us. God bless. Bye-bye.
Some nut in an armored vehicle that had blocked traffic on the bridge, and supposedly he was armed, and he was flashing notes.
Police say Matthew Wright from Henderson barricaded himself inside an armored truck on the Pat Tillman Bridge, a link to the national icon.